Daniel Bryan. Daniel Wyatt is dead. Long live Daniel Bryan. And to all the people who said, oh, it's a heel turn, they turned him heel, I can't believe they did that. Like I said from day one, he never turned heel. I thought it was all a ruse and that they were going to expose it at the Royal Rumble. So I was wrong about that. It wasn't a ruse. Or maybe it was. Maybe I take that back. Maybe it was a ruse. Maybe the whole idea was that Kane is in cahoots with Bryan. He's like a mole in the Authority. Remember, on Raw Monday night, when Kane was backstage with Brad Maddox, and they made that tag team cage match, Maddox made the match, and then Kane said, yeah, well, I'm going to put a chain around the door so nobody can get in and out. Now, do I actually think they have enough foresight in terms of their storylines to actually think of something like that, where Kane is a mole, the whole time? I don't think so. I doubt very seriously that that's the direction that they're going in. It's fun to think about. I mean, it was the Wyatts who left Kane laying at SummerSlam, and when he came back, he went corporate and surrendered himself to the Authority. But maybe it was a case where Bryan finally got Bray all to himself inside the cage, and it was premeditated. We'll find out more on TV maybe this Monday. But they did the deal where the Wyatts, it was Bray and Bryan at the beginning of the show. They went up against the Usos. And how about those Usos? Opening and closing the show with wins. For a team they were doing nothing with the early part of last year, they've really stepped up and become a force in the tag team division, not just background players. I really think it goes back to that Money in the Bank pre-show match with the Shield last summer. It was one of my favorite matches all year. That was such a great match. I think it opened a lot of eyes, and they've been on something of a roll ever since. They still haven't won the tag team titles, but I think they will in due time. They've done a lot better than I ever thought they would. And the one thing is, I fear that with the end of the show, what happened with Bryan, that maybe this win was overlooked. Their win was almost just background noise more than anything else. But let's not forget about their awesome night, too. Got to give them credit here. And I love that split-screen promo they did with them before the main event. Very old-school feel to it. But back to Bryan. The cage match ends. Usos win. Bray went to go give him Sister Abigail. Bryan broke away, and then at that point, a crowd which had been dead pretty much, not the whole night necessarily, but for that match, they were awfully quiet to the point where I could hear the air conditioning running in the background in the arena. This place just came unglued like I've never seen a crowd come unglued before. It was just beautiful. It was a beautiful sight. It was one of the best memorable endings of a Raw episode in history. I don't know where it ranks. I did a listing a while back of the top 30 Raw moments, and I think I did that right around the time they did Raw 1000. And if I can go back and redo that list, this moment would be on that list. Where it would rank from 1 to 30, I don't know, but it would definitely be on that list. This was awesome. It was awesome. And I don't have a big screen HD TV, but if I did, I can only imagine what that camera shot would have looked like when they had Bryan doing the yes chant right before the flying knee. And you could just see the entire arena. They had this wide shot of the crowd, and everybody was just doing it in unison, faster and faster and faster. It reminded me of the Michigan State video that popped up a couple of weeks ago, where all the fans at the Michigan State game were doing the yes chants. And from what I read an item in the F4W newsletter this week that said the reason that Bryan turned back so quickly, because it was very, very rushed. I thought for sure they would at least let it go until the Rumble. I heard stories that they were going to let it go until WrestleMania. I think that would have been way too long. I never thought that 2 weeks later they would kill the storyline. So something happened that made them rush it. And the theory put forth in the newsletter makes about as much sense as anything else I've read, that being when the footage from the Michigan State game came out and it was all over SportsCenter and it was all over the blogs and Deadspin and everywhere else, it made them rethink their position on this storyline and say, oh shit, we got to get this guy back to where he was before. Because this guy's getting mainstream publicity, and meanwhile, simultaneously on television in this storyline, he's under the spell of a couple of hillbillies, a group of hillbillies from down in Florida or wherever the Wyatts are from. So it was for the better that they killed it. It made no sense the way this was all rushed. Absolutely, it made no sense. But it was for the better. Now, the one negative about this is that Bryan, somewhere in all of this, suffered a concussion. And I went back and watched that cage match. If it was in the cage match that it happened, I'm guessing it happened on the back suplex spot. I think it was Bryan with both Usos, and they gave him a back suplex off the top rope. That would be the only place in that match where I could conceivably see him suffering a concussion. Otherwise, I have no idea when it happened. He didn't forget anything in terms of the spots he was supposed to do at the end. He didn't look like he was concussed, that's for sure. Climbed up to the top of the cage when the show was over, sat there, did more yes chants. Apparently, he got confused after a while. He started looking around, didn't quite know what to do. There was a worker down on the ground looking up at him saying, go ahead, keep doing the yes chants, and Bryan was looking at him all confused. So it was a pretty serious concussion, it sounds like, that he suffered. He has virtually no memory, from what I've read, of the match. Which, if that's true, I mean, that really sucks, because you have to think that had to be one of the highlights of this guy's career. One of those moments that, he'll look back on probably years from now, thinking, wow, can't believe that reaction was for me. And if he really doesn't have any memory of it at all, that's kind of a cruel twist of irony there. But, let's see what happens. They've made no statements about it on WWE.com. They put no announcement out announcing that Bryan has a concussion. All the key websites like PW Insider, ProWrestling.net, The Observer, they all obtained statements directly from WWE spokespeople admitting that, yes, he did suffer a concussion. They just have not made that announcement public to the masses on their own website. So there's no question that he suffered a concussion. The only question now is the severity of it. How bad is it? I noticed they had a house show last night. I forgot where. Bryan did not appear on the house show as advertised, so they're keeping him out of action. How does that affect the Royal Rumble? It's too early to tell. It would really be a shame if he couldn't be a part of that pay-per-view. The pay-per-view is only a week away. And as we've seen before with guys like Dolph Ziggler and Fandango and others, when you suffer a concussion, let alone a serious concussion, they're going to keep you out for at least a few weeks until you're no longer exhibiting symptoms. So my guess would be that he'll be tested again on Monday. I don't know if they'll fly him to the show, but I mean, I'm sure they could put him on Raw even if he doesn't do anything physical. So if he's flown in for Raw Monday night, then they'll do some impact testing on him backstage, and at that point they'll determine if he's okay to compete. I think they would keep him out anyway until the pay-per-view, but let's hope everything works out well. When it comes to concussions, that's just stuff you don't want to fuck around with. Bryan has had a ton of concussions, which is not surprising given the style he wrestled on the Indies. So he's had a ton of concussions, probably a lot of undiagnosed concussions over his career. Dolph Ziggler is still out from his concussion, his second in less than a year. I don't think Bryan will have the same worries that a guy like Ziggler or Fandango might have when they get hurt and come back, and then WWE decides to do nothing with them. It's just the timing of everything, Royal Rumble, WrestleMania season. This is not an injury that Bryan wants to linger for too long, so hopefully he'll be okay. Check this out, guys. For you, the listeners of the Sound Off, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial so that you can check out their service. And it's a quality service. I wouldn't be mentioning it on my show if it wasn't. They have a bunch of wrestling books to choose from in audio form, including Lex Luger's book, Dusty Rhodes' book, Hulk Hogan's book is available with narration from the Hulkster himself. There's even one that chronicles the rise of the late Junkyard Dog in Mid-South, which sounds really interesting. You can choose any one of those free by trying Audible.com. If you commute to work, or if you like listening to things other than music at the gym, I know a lot of people listen to this podcast that way. It seems to me an audiobook would absolutely make sense. To get one, make sure you go to audibletrial.com/Solomonster. It's another way to show your support for the Sound Off, and you get something free in return. Can't beat that. Again, that's audibletrial.com/Solomonster. Time for the